trapped in an elevator for 7 hours. I lost consciousness from hypoxia while protecting my 6-month unborn baby with my life. When the doors finally pried open, my husband, the lieutenant of the fire department's rescue squad, scooped up his terrified ex-girlfriend in his arms and walked out with her first. Shortly after, when a young firefighter handed him my wedding ring along with my final message, he collapsed to the floor. The instant they forced the elevator doors open, I was practically out of oxygen. I could barely hear anything, but my hands were still desperately clutching my swollen belly. When Alex rushed in, I thought he would look for me first. Instead, he walked right past me and lifted Vanessa, who was shivering and crying in a corner. "Vanessa, it's okay. I'm here." His voice sounded desperate, hoarse, as if it were being ripped from his chest. I leaned my hand against the wall and tried to call out his name, but only a freezing breath escaped my throat. We were trapped in that elevator for 7 hours from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. At first, it was just a power outage in that massive department store in downtown Chicago. But then the emergency generator failed too. There were 8 of us in total. An elderly man, a little boy, 2 teenage girls, a delivery driver, Vanessa, and me. I was pregnant, but I was the only person in there with first aid knowledge from my past as an ER nurse. I reorganized everyone's positions. I placed the elderly man near the crack of the doors. I had the little boy sit all the way in the back. I asked the girls to take turns fanning the air, and the delivery guy used his phone's flashlight. I tore pages from a small notebook I kept in my purse and jotted down everyone's symptoms and the time. Vanessa was quiet at first. She sat next to me, pale, her fingers trembling non-stop. She said she was afraid of the dark. She said she couldn't breathe. And she said, "I wish Alex were here." I didn't respond to that last part. I just handed her half of my water bottle. Later on, the ventilation drastically worsened. The little boy was crying inconsolably, and the old man began complaining of chest pain. I asked everyone to stop talking to conserve energy. But suddenly Vanessa started screaming. "I don't want to die in here. Lauren, you're a nurse. Do something." Holding my belly, I stood up and mashed the already broken emergency button until my fingers went numb, but there was no response. I knelt back down and pounded on the elevator doors with all my might, beating out an SOS rhythm. My baby kicked sharply. I lowered my head, hugged my stomach and whispered, "Hold on a little longer, my love." At that moment, I still believed Alex would come for me. He was the lieutenant of the rescue unit. No one knew better than him that I was pregnant, and no one knew better than him how terrified I was of anything happening to our child. At the 6th hour, Vanessa suddenly lunged at me and grabbed my wrists. Her nails dug into my skin. "Lauren, I seriously can't breathe. Give me your spot near the doors." Near the doors was a small gap. It was the space I had left open for the old man and the little boy. "Sit down and stop wasting oxygen. We're all struggling," I told her. She cried even louder. "You hate me because I came back into Alex's life, don't you? You want to watch me die." Everyone in the elevator looked at me. I didn't defend myself. I simply pried her hands off me little by little. I put my jacket over the boy's back and moved the old man a bit closer to the gap. "Vanessa, if you have the energy to cry right now, it means you're not the one in the worst shape. The old man's lips are turning blue and the kid is sweating profusely. They need the ventilation more than you do." She was left speechless. The next second, she clutched her chest and collapsed. By that point, my own vision was blurring. I knew half of her fainting spell was genuine panic, but the other half was pure theater to force me to yield. However, I couldn't take any chances. With the help of Tyler, the delivery guy, we laid her on the floor. I checked her breathing and rummaged through her purse for her medication. The bottle read Xanax. It wasn't a rescue inhaler for asthma. I tossed the pills back. "If it's not asthma, don't scream again. Stop scaring the others," I told her in a low voice. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes, and there was an unmistakable hatred in her gaze. At the 7th hour, my ears began to ring. The baby's movements were growing weaker. I gathered my last ounce of strength and wrote down everyone's status in the notebook. elderly man, hypoxia, boy, high temperature, Vanessa, panic state, delivery driver, scratches on arm, pregnant woman, Lauren Davis, decreased fetal movement. After writing the last line, I took off my wedding ring. Alex had placed that ring on my finger with his own hands. On the day we got married, he told me, "Len, I go on a lot of calls. I might not always be home, but I promise you one thing. When you need me, I'll be the first one running to you." Back then, I believed him right up until I was 6 months pregnant. He missed 3 ultrasounds and I made up excuses for him. When Vanessa moved back from London, and he went to pick her up at the airport in the dead of night, I convinced myself they were just old friends. Even today, trapped in this elevator, my first instinct was to tell myself he would come to save me. But when the doors opened, he took Vanessa in his arms and walked away. He didn't even look at me. A blinding light flooded in from the outside. Paramedics rushed in with stretchers and oxygen tanks. I saw Alex running away into the distance. Vanessa had her arms wrapped around his neck, her face buried in his shoulder. She looked back at me. Her gaze was light, almost victorious. I felt my mind go blank and the ring nearly slipped from my fingers. Marcus, a young firefighter, knelt in front of me. Ma'am, are you all right?" I looked at him and slowly placed the ring in his hand. "Give it to Alex." Marcus was stunned. I summoned the absolute last breath I had left and said, "Tell him my baby and I won't be waiting for him anymore." Following those words, I slumped backward. When I woke up, I was in the ICU. I had oxygen tubes in my nose, and 4 in the back of my hand, and fetal monitors strapped around my belly, emitting steady beeps. A doctor stood by the bed with a grim expression. "The prolonged hypoxia has caused fluctuations in the fetal heart rate. First, we need to ensure the baby's stability, so we'll keep you under strict observation. Where is your family? Your husband went to the trauma ward accompanying another patient and hasn't returned." The doctor fell silent. I closed my eyes not out of pain, but because in that moment everything felt absurdly ridiculous. I had been married to Alex for 3 years. I knew his job was dangerous, that he could be called out on a rescue at any moment, and that in his heart there was an old wound named Vanessa. For him, I took care of his demanding mother. For him, I organized the family support lists for his firehouse. Since I got pregnant, I went to my checkups alone, waited in line alone, paid the co-pays alone, and drove home alone, dragging my aching back. I believed marriage was about mutual understanding. But the result of all that understanding was that he decided he never needed to put me first. Half an hour later, I heard hurried footsteps outside the room. Alex had finally returned. His voice sounded tense. "Where is she?" "Marcus, you were on guard at the door." Marcus didn't answer immediately. I heard the faint clink of a metallic object dropping into a palm. It was the sound of my marriage ending. Lieutenant Marcus said, "Your wife asked me to give you this." Alex's breathing hitched. Marcus continued, "She said she and your child won't be waiting for you anymore." There was a deathly silence on the other side of the door. The next second, Alex's voice changed entirely. "Where is she? Where is Lauren? How is she?" I opened my eyes and stared at the harsh white ceiling lights. The nurse peeked in to ask if she should let him in. I slowly shook my head. "I don't want to see him." The nurse nodded and closed the door. The moment it clicked shut, I heard Alex screaming my name from the hallway. I didn't answer. I placed my hands over my belly where a weak but steady pulse still beat and spoke to my baby. "Starting today, Mommy is done waiting for him." Alex stood outside the hospital room all night. The nurse told me that when she went out to change my 4-bag, he hadn't sat down or drunk any water. He was just staring down the hallway. "Your husband seems very worried about you." I ignored the comment. Worry that arrives late is like expired medicine. No matter how much you take, it won't save a life. At 7:00 a.m., the doctor came in for rounds. He glanced at my chart, frowning. "Last night, the fetal heart rate fluctuated dangerously. Luckily, first aid arrived just in time, but now you need absolute bed rest. 0 emotional triggers." He nodded. The doctor looked at me out of the corner of his eye and softened his tone. As a former ER nurse, you know the risks of hypoxia during pregnancy. Do not push yourself like that again. I managed a tired smile. If I hadn't pushed myself, the old man and the little boy with me wouldn't have made it until the doors opened. The doctor remained silent. He scribbled some instructions on the chart. Ensure fetal well-being. Observation. Avoid stress. While the nurse was bringing me water, there were 3 knocks on the door. It was a soft, familiar pattern. "Lauren, it's me," Alex said from outside. My fingers froze. The nurse looked at me and I said, "Don't open it." There were a few seconds of silence outside. Then Alex spoke again. "I know you're awake. I just want to see your face. Yours and the baby's." I looked at the jagged graph of the fetal monitor next to my bed. Those erratic lines looked exactly like the strength I had slowly depleted in the elevator last night. "Alex," I said loudly, "if you're so eager to see me right now, it must be because you've made sure Vanessa is okay." No sound came from the other side. I knew my words had hit the bullseye. Finally, Alex said, "Vanessa was terrified. She suffers from PTSD. I was afraid she'd have a secondary panic attack." I turned my face toward the cold door. So, my 6-month pregnancy wasn't as important as her getting a scare. His voice sounded desperate. "It's not that, Lauren. Please calm down." When I got into the elevator, the first thing I saw was her on the floor screaming my name. "I thought you could hold out longer. You're an ER nurse. You're stronger than her." That sentence made me laugh. Even though the laughter made my chest ache, so that was it. Being strong wasn't a reason to be cared for. It was the perfect excuse to leave me for last. "Alex," I said, "I am not the last emergency supply on your priority list. Nor am I a tool for you to decide who gets saved first. I am your wife and the mother of your child." A dull thud echoed from the hallway as if he had leaned heavily against the wall. "It was my fault. Mian. Let me explain it to you in person." Closed my eyes. "Save your explanations for the official incident report and your apologies for yourself. I don't want to see you." Another long silence. Suddenly, the doorknob turned from the outside, but the nurse immediately blocked it. "Sir, the patient is refusing visitors. You cannot force your way in." Alex let go of the knob, but his voice dropped an octave. "Lauren, don't use our child to threaten me." My eyes snapped open. Last night, when I was pounding on the elevator doors holding my belly, where was he? When my baby stopped moving and I passed out from lack of oxygen, who was he carrying in his arms? And now standing outside my door, he dared to say I was using my child to threaten him. I sat up, gripping the edge of the bed. The nurse tried to stop me, but I grabbed my phone and dialed Sarah, my college roommate and a ruthless divorce attorney. She answered with a sleepy voice. "Lauren, what's going on this early? Did you have a checkup today?" "Sarah, I need you to draw up divorce papers." "Where are you?" "Fetal intensive care at Chicago Med." "Alex is right outside the door." Sarah paused for exactly 1 second. "I'm on my way. Don't sign anything. Keep all medical reports, bills, and logs from the incident. And do not be left alone with him." Hung up. Alex on the other side of the door had clearly heard everything. His voice was frantic. "Lauren, are you serious? Last night when those elevator doors opened, you were pretty serious too, weren't you?" That sentence seemed to choke him. He didn't speak again for a long time. At 10 a.m., Vanessa arrived. I heard her crying softly in the hallway. "Alex, it's all my fault. Lauren must be furious with me. If I hadn't gotten so scared, you wouldn't have pulled me out first." "It's not your fault," he said. How many times had I heard that phrase? The day Vanessa moved back to the States, she called him at 11 p.m. crying because she lost her luggage and was scared to be alone at O'Hare. He left the homemade beef stew my mom had made for my pregnancy cravings, half-eaten, and drove to the airport. When I asked why he didn't just tell her to go to airport security or customer service, he replied, "It's not her fault. She's been living abroad for years and feels insecure." When Vanessa had a stomach ache, he missed my first 3D ultrasound. When he got back and I showed him the photo of the baby, he interrupted me. Try to understand. It was an emergency. It's not her fault. When Vanessa moved into our neighborhood, he installed her curtains, fixed her plumbing, and delivered her medicine. When I told him she relied on him too much, he answered, "Len, it's not her fault. I owe her my life." That supposed life debt was like an invisible noose that suffocated my marriage for 3 years, but I wasn't going to let it choke me anymore. There was another knock on the door. This time it was Vanessa. Her voice was thin and shaky. "Lauren, can I come in to see you?" Before I could answer, she had already pushed the door open. Alex walked in behind her, frowning, but he didn't stop her. When the nurse tried to kick her out, Vanessa started crying, her eyes bloodshot. She was wearing a hospital gown and a small bandage on her forehead. Even though she'd only gotten a minor scratch last night, she looked like she had just fled a war zone. She stood at the foot of my bed, clasping her hands. I really didn't do it on purpose. I didn't ask him to get me out first. I was just so scared. I thought I was dying. I stared at her coldly. "Didn't the doctor tell you before you walked in that I can't have emotional stress?" Vanessa rushed to say. "He's just worried about you." I laughed. "Oh, so because he's worried about me, he barges into fetal intensive care without permission. And because you're so worried about me, you tag along." Alex's face palled. "Lauren, you don't have to talk to her like that." I pointed to my medical chart on the nightstand. "And how should I talk to her? Should I tell her not to worry? That I totally understand that her little panic attack is more important than my child's life." He reached out to touch the medical chart, but before he could, I swatted his hand away. "Don't touch it. You no longer have any right to sign or review my medical documents." Alex's hand froze in midair. Vanessa's tears spilled over. "I know you've hated me since I came back from London. If my presence bothers you so much, I'll leave." He nodded. "Yeah, leave right now." She didn't expect such a blunt response. She stood there dumbfounded, tears half fallen, not knowing what to do. Alex furrowed his brow. "Lauren." I pressed the call button for the nurse. When she rushed in, I said, "Please remove these people who have nothing to do with me. I need to rest." The nurse looked at Alex, then at Vanessa. "The patient needs absolute bed rest. Please step out." Alex didn't move. His eyes were locked onto my hand. It was bare. On my ring finger, only a faint indent remained. He suddenly asked in a raspy voice, "Where is the ring? Did they give it back to you?" His Adam's apple bobbed. "I will not accept a divorce." I looked him dead in the eye and enunciated every word with absolute clarity. "Alex, I don't need you to accept the divorce, just like I didn't need your permission to take off the ring." Just then, I heard hurried footsteps and a commotion approaching. I thought it was Sarah, but the person who burst in was Brenda, my mother-in-law. As soon as she entered, she slammed her designer purse onto the table. "Enough is enough, Lauren." Vanessa was so terrified she couldn't sleep all night after getting out of that elevator. And instead of comforting her, "You're making a fool out of my son. You are still a daughter-in-law of this family." I leaned back against the pillows and slowly looked up. So, the second act of the heroic rescue had just begun. Brenda walked in with the attitude of a prosecutor interrogating a criminal. She wore an impeccable purple pants suit, her hair perfectly sprayed into place, and on her wrist was the $3,000 gold bracelet I had bought her last year. Back then, she complained the design was outdated. But in the family group chat, she bragged that Vanessa is the one with good taste. The platinum necklace she got me makes me look younger. I hadn't cared because she was Alex's mother. But now, standing by my hospital bed, her first words weren't to ask about my health or her grandchild's. She said, "If you apologize to Vanessa, we will forget this whole thing." I stared at her. "I should apologize to who?" "To Vanessa." "Obviously," she replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "The poor girl got locked in an elevator and was scared half to death. And you using your pregnancy as an excuse are giving everyone attitude. Alex is a firefighter who he saves first is a professional decision. Don't pressure him with your marital drama. I started laughing. Does Brenda know how low her grandson's heart rate dropped last night? But the baby is fine, isn't he? That simple sentence made silence crash down upon the room. Suddenly, I understood everything. In her eyes. As long as I was breathing and the child hadn't died, nothing they did to me was an injustice. But Vanessa shedding 3 tears was a global tragedy. Alex seemed to realize how cruel those words sounded. He muttered, "Mom, don't talk like that. What did I say wrong?" Brenda glared at him. Look at her throwing the word divorce around at the drop of a hat. She thinks she's the only woman in the world who's ever gotten pregnant. I was working on my feet waiting tables when I was expecting you. I sat up slowly. The nurse tried to help me, but I stopped her with a hand. Brenda, working on your feet while pregnant was your reality. Me being on strict bed rest right now so my baby doesn't die is a medical order. If you think the doctors are exaggerating, take it up with the OB/GYN department. Brenda's face changed color. Lauren, what a lack of respect for your elders. Speaking of elders, I picked up my phone from the nightstand and opened my banking app. Since we're all here, let's settle the accounts once and for all. Lauren, don't bring up money right now. Alex frowned instantly. I looked at him. When should I bring it up? Should I wait until I'm in an operating room so you can tell me we're family and shouldn't be petty? Hearing the word money, panic flashed in Brenda's eyes. I tapped the first transaction. March of last year, Brenda said her back hurt and she wanted to go to a private rehab clinic. I paid $800 for 12 physical therapy sessions. June of last year, donation for your brother-in-law's kids' private school. $1,000. Brenda asked me to front it. October of last year, renovations on the family cabin upstate. Since Alex was deployed on a wildfire team, Brenda asked me to cover $1,500 for materials. January of this year, Brenda didn't want to look cheap at the family dinner and made me book an upscale steakhouse. Between the deposit and the final bill that was $600. With every figure I read out, Brenda's face grew whiter. Alex, standing next to her, wore an expression of absolute confusion. He didn't know, or rather, he never bothered to know. Every time his mother asked me for money, I kept it from him to avoid family conflicts. I used to think that if I gave everything, someday he would see it. Now I understood that someone who doesn't want to look at you will simply ignore you. I turned the phone screen toward Brenda. Over 3 years, that's a total of roughly $5,500. And that's not counting daily expenses, groceries, dinners, or the monthly allowance. Brenda swallowed hard. What are you implying? You're a daughter-in-law. It's your duty to take care of your in-laws. Sure, I said, but I don't want to do it anymore. Alex's expression fell apart. I didn't look at him. I went to the automatic transfers page and right in front of them canceled the $200 monthly deposit I sent Brenda. Then I canceled the autopay for the electricity and water bills for the family cabin. When I finished, I set the phone down. Starting today, manage your own family's expenses. My money will be used to support me and my child. I no longer have extra cash to feed people who don't treat us like human beings. Brenda turned pale with rage. How dare you? I met her eyes. I just did. Vanessa suddenly leaned against the door frame, murmuring, Alex, I'm dizzy. Alex, almost by pure instinct, reached out a hand to steady her. It was a movement so fast it seemed burned into his bones. Seeing that hand, my heart finished freezing over. Right at that moment, Sarah walked in. She was wearing a sharp black trench coat and holding a manila envelope. Her eyes swept over everyone's faces before landing on me. Lauren, I brought the divorce papers. Alex shot her a fierce glare. Sarah, stay out of our family business. Sarah smiled coldly. Mr. Davis. I am the legal representative of Miss Lauren Davis. I advise you to measure your words carefully. Taking notes, Brenda slammed her hand on the table, indignant. A lawyer. Lauren. Are you seriously getting a divorce? You're carrying a Davis in your belly. Where are you going to go if you divorce? I reached out and took the envelope. The child is mine, and where I go is no longer any of your concern. Alex stepped forward and lowered his voice. Lauren, are you really going to push this to the extreme? I looked up at him. Alex, weren't you the one who pushed us to this extreme the second you scooped Vanessa into your arms and walked away? Vanessa sobbed. Lauren, you think I stole Alex from you, don't you? But I swear it's not like that. In the elevator I just wanted to help you, but you wouldn't let me near the air vents, saying I wasn't sick. I glared at her. Do you really want to talk about what happened in the elevator right now? She was rendered speechless for a second. Alex frowned. What do you mean? Before I could answer, Marcus' voice echoed from the hallway. Lieutenant Davis, we just got the formal statements from the other civilians trapped in the elevator. Marcus was holding a thin folder. Noticing the tension in the room, he stopped dead in his tracks. Brenda was the first to jump on it. Perfect. Let's all hear it. Let's see just how much drama Lauren stirred up in there. Marcus's expression was complicated. He looked at me first. He nodded. Read it. Vanessa's face instantly changed. She reached out and tugged on Alex's arm. Alex, I feel sick. Let's go. He didn't move. Marcus flipped open the first page. Statement from Chloe, the mother of the trapped boy. Throughout the entire ordeal, Lauren Davis maintained order and gave up the only ventilated space to my son and an elderly man. Vanessa repeatedly screamed, demanding to switch spots, and even shoved Lauren by the arm. Vanessa went as white as a sheet, Marcus continued. Statement from Tyler, the delivery driver. Around the 6th hour, Vanessa claimed she was having an asthma attack, but there was no rescue inhaler in her purse, only anti-anxiety meds. When Lauren asked her to stop screaming so she wouldn't waste oxygen, Vanessa accused Lauren of trying to murder her. The silence in the room was absolute. Brenda's hand was still frozen midair. Alex turned very slowly toward Vanessa. You pushed Lauren in the elevator. Vanessa's lips trembled. It wasn't on purpose. I was just so scared. See, I said calmly. It's not her fault. Once again, Alex's face drained of color. Marcus closed the folder, lowering his voice slightly. There's another report. Lieutenant, Internal Affairs requires you to report to the firehouse at 3:00 p.m. to explain your triage protocol at the scene. Was there a problem with the protocol? Alex frowned. Marcus glanced at me sideways and looked down. From the moment you carried Vanessa out until the medical team reached your wife, there was a 3-minute and 20-second gap in care. By then, she had lost consciousness, and there was fetal distress. 3 minutes and 20 seconds. It's a short amount of time, barely enough to listen to one song, but inside an oxygen-deprived elevator, those 3 minutes and 20 seconds were enough to drag my baby to the brink of death. Alex's shoulders went rigid. I stared right at him. Do you still think I'm just stirring up drama? He didn't answer. His hands were gripping my wedding ring so tightly. His knuckles were bone white. I knew those hands well. Those hands knew how to untie rescue ropes, carry stretchers, and pull victims from the rubble with extreme care. But last night those same hands walked right past me. And lifted Vanessa. Alex muttered. Lauren, I swear I didn't know you were in such bad shape. I looked into his eyes. You didn't know because you didn't even look at me. That sentence was more devastating than any accusation. He stood petrified. Vanessa shook her head, crying. Alex, don't believe them. They're all taking her side just because she's pregnant. I really felt like I was suffocating. Vanessa. Marcus frowned. These statements aren't from just one person. All the rescued civilians gave their testimonies separately, and they all match. Vanessa's eyes grew even redder. Marcus, you're attacking me too. I know you really admire Lauren, but I was a victim too. She was cunning. With a single sentence, she was placing herself back into the victim role. I used to think that maybe she was just genuinely fragile, relying on Alex out of pure insecurity. But last night in the elevator I saw it clearly for the first time. Her fragility was selective. If there was an old man and a kid, she didn't care about anyone else. If there was a firefighter, she trembled. If Alex was there, she passed out. Sarah stepped up to my bed and tapped the envelope on the nightstand. Lauren, given your current medical state, It's not good for you to tolerate this circus. I suggest you ask them to leave. He nodded. Brenda looked like she wanted to say something else, but Sarah shot her a piercing glare. Ma'am, the patient needs strict bed rest. If you continue disturbing the peace in this room, I will have hospital security remove you. Brenda bristled. Are you threatening me? It's not a threat, Sarah replied flatly. It's a formal warning. There were 2 nurses peeking in from the doorway watching the scene. Brenda didn't have the guts to cause a bigger scene, so she settled for shooting me a venomous look. Lauren, you're going to regret this. The life of a divorced woman with a kid dragging her down is hell. If I don't divorce now, my child and I will be swallowed by hell, I replied calmly. This time Brenda had no comeback. Marcus called Alex to tell him he needed to head back to the firehouse for the briefing. Before leaving, Alex stood in the doorway, staring at me for a long time. Lauren, we'll talk when I get back. Closed my eyes. There's nothing to talk about. We'll speak through the divorce settlement. When the door finally clicked shut, my back, which had been rigid the entire time, collapsed. Sarah held me up. Are you in pain? No. I shook my head, just exhausted. She handed me a cup of lukewarm water. You should have gotten sick of this a long time ago. I smiled weakly, but tears suddenly began to fall. I wasn't crying because I missed Alex. I was crying because I felt sorry for the Lauren from last night. Honestly, the 7 hours I spent trapped in the elevator didn't start when the power went out. They started the day Vanessa returned to the US. That day, Alex was with me for an ultrasound at the OB/GYN clinic. While we waited, his phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, his expression changed. Who is it? He asked. Vanessa, he said. I knew who Vanessa was. His unforgettable first love. They grew up together. 10 years ago, they were trapped under the rubble of a collapsed building during severe flash floods. Alex always recounted how in the most critical moment, Vanessa held his hand and begged him not to fall asleep. He remembered that life debt for a decade. Vanessa eventually moved overseas and he was moody for a long time. When I met him, he was already the coldest, most rational man in the rescue unit. He rarely spoke of the past, but when he drank too much, he muttered Vanessa's name. I knew this, but back then I thought the past was just the past. I thought that if a man wanted to marry and have kids with you, it meant he had chosen the present. Much later, I realized that for some men, marriage isn't waking up from a dream. It's just finding an understanding woman to manage their lives. That day, Vanessa was crying on the phone, saying she was lost at O'Hare and didn't have her bags. Alex jumped out of his seat. I held our Delhi-style ticket number in my hand. It's almost our turn, I told him. He replied. Lauren, Vanessa just landed and doesn't know anyone here anymore. Go to the appointment yourself. I'll be right back. He didn't come back. The tech printed out the first clear picture of my baby's little face. I sat alone in the hallway staring at that tiny hand on the glossy paper. I texted him and he replied. Vanessa is really shaken up. I'll be home later. From then on, his times I'll be home later times s multiplied. When Vanessa was apartment hunting, he was home later. When Vanessa got sick, he was home later. When Vanessa couldn't find a job, he was home later. When I was throwing up bile from morning sickness, he told me rescue drills were exceptionally grueling. When I got midnight leg cramps, he said Vanessa was having nightmares and couldn't sleep alone. I never really got angry. I simply wrote down every detail, not to keep score but because the midwife at the birthing center had asked me to keep a pregnancy emotions and family support journal. She said pregnancy shouldn't be endured in solitude. Partner support is fundamental. I wrote in that journal from the first month to the 6th. Alex missed 12 medical appointments and Vanessa appeared in it 17 times. Now that notebook I hated looking at had become my most useful piece of evidence. When Sarah flipped through the journal, her frown deepened. Good Lord, you've put up with a lot. I leaned against the bed, my voice faint. I used to think that because he's a firefighter, saving others was his duty. I didn't want to compete with someone who genuinely needed help. But Vanessa wasn't constantly in danger. She just constantly put herself in situations where he had to save her. I didn't say anything else because it was the absolute truth. That afternoon Marcus texted me. He said the hearing confirmed a severe protocol failure at the scene. Alex, as the officer in charge, failed to perform basic medical triage and extracted Vanessa directly, causing a critical delay. Marcus also mentioned that Alex sat in silence the entire meeting. When they published the civilian statements, Alex suddenly asked, "Did Lauren ever call out to me from inside?" Marcus said no one answered him in the room because all the logs showed I hadn't uttered his name a single time. I yelled for them to take the old man out first. I yelled for someone to give the kid water. I yelled at them not to push because there was no air. But I never called out for my husband because I firmly believed that the second he saw me, he would run to me. At 8 p.m., Alex returned to the hospital. This time he didn't knock. He stood outside looking at me through the glass. I looked back at him. He seemed to have aged overnight. He had dark sunken circles under his eyes which were completely bloodshot. My phone buzzed. It was a text from him. "Lauren, I read all the reports. Sorry." I stared at those two words and turned off my phone. And I'm sorry spoken before a tragedy occurs as human. But spoken after destroying someone. It's just a useless echo that fixes nothing. I was hospitalized for 5 days. During those 5 days, Alex came every day. Sometimes he brought soup, sometimes fruit, sometimes baby clothes. Everything was intercepted by the nurses. He wouldn't leave. He'd just sit on the benches down the hall. At night, when I was wheeled out for tests, I'd see him in the distance, head bowed, holding our wedding ring. I won't lie and say I didn't feel a pang of pain. After all, I had loved him. I loved him so much. I took care of his mother like she was my own. So much that I texted updates to the Firehouse families even during the worst days of my pregnancy. So much that if I heard he got injured on a call, I'd run out of the house in my slippers to wait for him at the station doors. But love isn't an impenetrable life jacket. I couldn't risk my life for him one more time. On the 5th day, the doctor discharged me, ordering strict bed rest at home and warning me to avoid exhaustion or emotional distress at all costs. Alex found out immediately. He assumed I'd be going back to our house. He even deep cleaned it. I found out because the building super called to ask if Alex knew how to assemble a crib or if the smell of bleach would harm a pregnant woman. I just told him I'm not going back there. On the day of my discharge, Sarah came to pick me up in her compact car. She had laid down soft cushions in the back seat. Before I could get in, Alex came jogging over from the other side of the parking garage. "Lauren." He was holding a brown paper bag. Inside were blueberry muffins, the only thing I could stomach during my first trimester nausea. He had finally remembered. Too bad I leaning against the car door. Didn't even glance at the bag. "What do you want, Alex?" Sarah snapped. He stopped in front of me and swallowed hard. "I know you don't want to go back to the house. Leave. You go live there. It's close to the hospital and everything is set up." "Not necessary," I said. "I already rented an apartment." Panic flashed across his eyes. "You rented an apartment. You're pregnant. You shouldn't be moving around. I'm worried about you." I smiled slightly. "Alex, doesn't it feel ridiculous that you're worrying about me now?" His face went pale. Sarah, standing beside me, warned coldly. "Mr. Davis. Lauren can't stand for long periods." Alex took a deep breath. "Okay, don't get upset. Just give me the address. I just want to take care of you. I promise I won't bother you." I shook my head. "Not necessary." He started to lose his nerve. "Lauren, you can't just cut me out of your life like this. I'm the father of that child." I stared at him. "You are the father, which is exactly why your duty is to respect the medical needs and mental peace of the mother, not harass me in a hospital parking garage." He was stunned. I continued. "First, do not come see me privately. Communicate through my lawyer. Second, do not ever bring Vanessa near me again. And third, keep your mother away from me. And if I do all that," Alex's voice cracked, "would you consider not getting a divorce?" No. I didn't hesitate for a second. Something broke deep in his eyes. Why? I looked at the bag of muffins in his hand. Because I just don't have an appetite for it anymore. The phrase was light, but to him it sounded like the cruelest punishment. He lowered his head, stared at the bag, and slowly clenched his fists. Got into the car. Right before I pulled the door shut, he suddenly held out my wedding ring. Lauren, keep this. Just hold on to it. When you're calmer, we'll talk. I didn't take it. Sarah spoke for me. Mr. Davis. Miss Davis returned the ring of her own free will. There is no concept of holding on to it. Do whatever you want with it. Throw it in the Chicago River for all we care, but don't try to tie her down with it. The car door shut and we drove out of the garage. In the rear view mirror, I saw Alex standing motionless, the bag dangling limply from his hand. I didn't look back again. The rented apartment was just 2 blocks from the hospital. It was small but flooded with natural light. Sarah helped me bring my things up and stuck a medication schedule on the fridge. I'll come check on you once a day. Starting tomorrow, Martha will come help out around the house. She took care of my aunt. She's completely trustworthy, Sarah said. I nodded and thanked her. Sarah sat next to me with a rare, serious expression. Lauren, are you absolutely sure? Going through a divorce while pregnant is brutal. Not just the paperwork but the people. Alex is going to regret it and won't leave you alone. Your mother-in-law will throw a fit. Vanessa will play the victim. And everyone will tell you to forgive him. I stroked my belly. I'm sure. How can you be so certain? I stayed quiet for a moment, then said, last night I had a dream. I dreamt I was still trapped in the elevator. The doors opened. Alex walked in, grabbed Vanessa, and left. And it happened over and over again. I screamed from the back until I lost my voice, but he never heard me. My baby's movements faded little by little. When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. In that moment, I knew there's no going back. A house that gives a pregnant woman nightmares is not a home. That same night, Alex went back to our old house. He sent me dozens of photos. The spotless living room, the assembled crib, pregnancy cookbooks on the kitchen counter, safety bumpers on the furniture corners. He texted, Len, I was a disaster before. From now on, I'm going to learn. I looked at the photos for a long time. I wasn't moved. I just felt pity. If all these things had appeared earlier, maybe I would have cried tears of joy. Now, I just felt like a student trying to turn in homework when the semester was already over. Marriage isn't an exam. A late assignment doesn't get a passing grade. I didn't reply. At 10:30 p.m., Alex sent a voice memo. His tone was incredibly low. Today, when I got home, I realized for the first time that you took everything for the baby. The clothes, the little shoes, the medical files. You even took the papers off the fridge. He took a long pause. Lauren, this house just suddenly feels so empty. I stopped the audio. The house didn't get empty suddenly. It emptied out little by little every single time he ran out the door to rescue Vanessa. The only difference was that now he had finally noticed. The next morning Martha arrived. She was a woman in her 50s, very capable and a woman of few words. Seeing my pale face, the first thing she said was, Ma'am, in this house, your health and the baby come first. Everything else is background noise. Smiled. How do you know there's everything else, Martha? Because you live alone and your eyes are bloodshot. She didn't pry further, which I was infinitely grateful for. But the peace didn't last long. Noon, the doorbell rang. Martha checked the peephole and frowned. There's an older woman and a young girl. I didn't even have to guess. Brenda and Vanessa. I sat on the couch and rested a hand on my belly. Don't open it. From outside, Brenda's voice soon rang out. Lauren, I know you're in there. Don't hide. Who do you think you are making my grandchild live in some cheap rental? Vanessa spoke up softly too. Brenda, don't get mad. Maybe Lauren is just confused. Brenda started pounding on the door. Confused my foot. Alex is groveling for her forgiveness. What more does she want? Does she want to destroy the Davis family? Martha frowned. I'm calling the cops. Not yet, I said. I picked up my phone, opened the smart doorbell app, and turned on the camera microphone. Brenda's face filled the screen. Seeing the light turn on, she yelled, "Open the door, Lauren." The doctor ordered me on bed rest. I replied through the intercom, "If you keep banging on my door, I'm calling the building manager and the Chicago police." "What are you talking about?" Brenda was perplexed. "Since when do you talk to me like a stranger?" "Since I stopped being part of your family." Brenda's face turned purple with rage. "Who do you think you are? Let me warn you, nobody wants to take on a pregnant divorce. And no matter how much of a scene you make now, you'll end up crawling back to Alex in tears." "Then pull up a chair and wait," I said and cut the audio. The hallway was silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, Vanessa started crying. "Lauren, you hate me too, don't you? If you want to blame me, do it. But don't blame Alex. He suffered enough these past few days." I turned the intercom back on. "Vanessa." She looked at the camera. "If you cry at my door one more time, I will print out the official fire department incident reports and tape them to the lobby entrance so every neighbor in this building can read about how you stole the oxygen from a pregnant woman." Her face completely transformed. Brenda too stood frozen like a statue. "Besides, what you care about most in the world is what people think of you, right? So don't ever come back here." This time the silence was absolute. Minutes later they left. Martha looked at me and exclaimed, "My goodness, you've got a spine of steel, ma'am." I leaned back on the couch. "I have to be strong, Martha. I don't have anyone standing behind me to protect me anymore. I have to be my own rescue team." The day of the official Internal Affairs Committee hearing at the fire department headquarters. I didn't want to go. The doctor had advised against leaving the house, and Sarah said submitting a written statement was enough. However, I went not to watch Alex be humiliated, but to make the record of those 7 hours crystal clear. A failure in a rescue protocol couldn't be covered up with the excuse that she was just really scared. I couldn't allow the narrative to be that a woman's life could be pushed to the back burner just because someone else acted more fragile and vulnerable. The committee met in the third-floor boardroom. When I arrived, there were already over a dozen people seated. The battalion chief, internal affairs investigators, paramedics, firefighters from the unit, and legal reps from the department store. Alex was sitting in the front row on the left. Seeing me walk in, he stood up like a coiled spring. "Lauren, what are you doing here?" The doctor said, "You needed bed rest." I didn't look at him. I sat down with Sarah's help. "I came to give my statement as a victim." He was going to say something else, but the chief cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Davis, sit down." Alex had no choice but to obey, but he couldn't take his eyes off me. I knew he was worried, but his concern felt as uncomfortable and absurd as putting on a jacket 3 sizes too small. The inquiry began. The incident timeline was projected on the screen. 1407 elevator failure. 1411 to 911. Call 1540. Generator failure. 1720. Clear symptoms in occupants. 2052 doors breached. 2056. Extraction of first patient. The screen stopped there. Patient 1 Vanessa. Female. Minor contusions. Panic response. Patient 2 boy, elevated temperature. Patient 3 elderly man, severe hypoxia. Patient 4 Lauren Davis, 24 weeks pregnant, loss of consciousness, fetal bradycardia. The room plunged into a deathly silence. The head investigator spoke. "Lieutenant Davis, as the officer in charge of the first in unit, why didn't you perform a rapid triage of the victims?" Alex's Adam's apple bobbed. "It was very dark. Miss Vanessa was collapsed near the doors, highly unstable. I determined she was suffering from an acute stress attack." "Did you not notice that Mrs. Lauren Davis was unconscious?" the investigator asked. Alex took 2 full seconds to answer. "No, I didn't notice." "Did you know Mrs. Davis was pregnant?" This time the silence was even longer. "Yes, I knew." The sound of pens scratching on legal pads was so loud it felt like they were slapping him in the face. The lead CFD paramedic took the floor. "According to our unit's report, when we reached Mrs. Davis, She was experiencing critical desaturation and fetal distress. Fortunately, we acted quickly. Otherwise, the consequences would have been irreversible. Alex's back went rigid. Sitting across from him, my hands were a little sweaty. Sarah squeezed my hand gently. I pulled out the notes I had ripped from my notebook in the elevator. The paper was crumpled, and one corner still bore the half-moon indentations of Vanessa's fingernails. I handed it to the investigators. These are the logs I kept inside the elevator. I recorded the clinical progression of the trapped individuals periodically. The head investigator took it, skimmed the pages, and his face grew stern. Even in a state of hypoxia, you were tracking vitals. It's a habit from my ER days. In the middle of chaos, a log saves lives, I answered. Someone in the room let out a low sigh. Alex stared at the floor. Vanessa was there too. She was sitting in the very back row. Pale, looking especially weak now that she didn't have Alex next to her. The investigators turned to her. Miss Vanessa, several testimonies confirm that you repeatedly demanded the pregnant woman give up the ventilated space and even got physical with her. What do you have to say? Vanessa instantly started crying. I was terrified. I don't remember anything. Just because you don't remember doesn't mean it didn't happen, interrupted Tyler, the delivery guy from the elevator, who had also been subpoenaed. I saw the whole thing. She grabbed Lauren's arm, demanding her spot. When Lauren told her the grandpa and the kid were worse off, she started screaming that Lauren was trying to murder her. Don't say that, Vanessa snapped. I was trapped too. Is it a crime to be scared? Tyler frowned. Being scared isn't a crime, but shoving a pregnant woman is. Several eyes in the room locked onto Vanessa, and they were no longer looks of pity, but of judgment. Vanessa couldn't handle it and buried her face in her hands, sobbing. In the past, if she cried, Alex would fly to her side. This time he didn't even flinch. His hands were resting on his knees, gripping them so hard his knuckles were stark white. The inquiry continued. Marcus spoke as the second responder. His voice was steady, but you could hear the suppressed anger. When I made entry, Lieutenant Davis was already carrying Miss Vanessa out. The elevator was pitch black and chaotic. It wasn't until someone yelled that the pregnant woman had passed out that I noticed Mrs. Davis slumped in the back right corner. She still had the notebook in her hand. When did she give you the wedding ring? The investigator asked. The atmosphere froze. Alex looked up sharply. Marcus glanced at me and I nodded. Right before we loaded her onto the backboard, she pressed the ring into my hand. She was semi-conscious, but she spoke very clearly. The investigator asked no more questions, but Alex knew. I could see his eyes filling with tears. Before concluding, the battalion chief announced the resolution. Alex was temporarily suspended from frontline command duties, pending internal reevaluation and mandatory retraining. It wasn't the maximum penalty, but for Alex, it was total humiliation. He was the youngest lieutenant at the station, always praised for being cool-headed and professional. And this time he had failed at the most basic principle of the job. Once the meeting adjourned, I stood up to leave. Alex followed me, but Sarah stepped in his way. He stopped, his eyes exhausted. Lauren, I only found out today about everything you did in there. You didn't just find out today, Alex, I told him. The problem is you never believed I could ever need saving. He was left speechless. At that moment, a veteran firefighter walked out of the boardroom. Seeing Alex, he sighed and approached. Alex, I've been meaning to tell you this regarding the building collapse during the flash floods 10 years ago. You've always been so grateful to Vanessa, but I think your memory is playing tricks on you. Alex turned sharply. What are you talking about? Vanessa froze in place. The veteran firefighter glanced sideways at Vanessa and spoke in a low voice. The person who held your hand and kept you awake wasn't her. She was just as terrified and in shock as you. It was another girl, a bystander who crawled in to help you and then ran off to flag down the rescue teams. Later, the initial reports got misplaced and when you woke up in the hospital, you only saw Vanessa crying next to your bed, so you assumed it was her. Alex stood paralyzed. Every drop of blood drained from Vanessa's face. I wasn't overly surprised. A relationship built for 10 years upon a fake life debt was bound to crumble eventually. Alex glared at Vanessa. Is he telling the truth? Vanessa's lips trembled. Alex, I was right next to you too. I didn't lie. But she couldn't continue. I didn't stay to listen to the rest. As Sarah helped me walk out of the building, I heard Alex scream in absolute fury for the first time. Vanessa, tell me the truth. What really happened after the elevator incident? The first thread broke our marriage. Now, the second thread was snapping the 10-year illusion between him and Vanessa. After the hearing, Alex disappeared for 2 days. He didn't text me. He didn't go to the hospital, and he didn't show up at my apartment. Sarah told me he was probably digging into the past. Wow, I replied. The truth was, I cared very little whether Vanessa had saved him or not. That didn't change my decision because even if she had actually saved his life, it wasn't an excuse to leave me and his child to die. On the third day, Brenda called me. I didn't answer. He sent a text. Come to dinner on Saturday. Aunts, uncles, and cousins will be here. Don't embarrass us. I showed the phone to Sarah, who laughed bitterly. It's a snake pit. Don't worry, it's fine. I answered, slipping my ledger book into my purse. There was no point in hiding. If she loved seeking the family's opinion, I'd let the family judge. On Saturday night, the Davis family dining table was packed. There was the eldest aunt, the older cousin, the younger cousin, and distant relatives who usually only showed up for Thanksgiving. As I walked in, all eyes glued to my belly. Brenda sat at the head of the table, her face stern. Alex was there too. Seeing me, he jumped up. Lauren, you came. I ignored him and took the chair closest to the door. Brenda frowned in disgust. Why are you sitting so far away? Don't play the victim at a family dinner. Makes it easier to leave early, I replied. Silence fell over the table. Alex muttered, Mom. But Brenda ignored him and cut to the chase. I called you all here today to set the record straight. It's normal for a marriage to have friction. Alex is a firefighter. His job is to save lives. If he pulled Vanessa out first that day, it was a medical emergency, not because he was playing favorites. The eldest aunt chimed in immediately. Exactly, Lauren. A man being good at his job is a virtue. You're expecting his child. Don't go making a scene with divorce talk at this stage. The great-uncle added. Besides, Vanessa and Alex have known each other their whole lives. She's like a little sister to him. Don't be so jealous. I picked up a pitcher of water, poured myself a glass, and took a sip in no rush to reply. Brenda, seeing me stay quiet, assumed I was cowed and raised her voice. Lauren, show a little maturity in front of the family. Drop this divorce nonsense. And you really ought to apologize to Vanessa for treating her so poorly in that elevator. Alex's face changed drastically. Enough. Brenda slammed her hand on the table. Enough what? She's carrying a Davis baby. She needs to know how to behave. Look at her turning the house upside down these past few days. I set the water glass down. Are you finished, Davis family? Brenda blanched. I called them the Davis family because I no longer intended to be a daughter-in-law. I pulled the ledger from my purse and dropped it onto the center of the table with a loud thud. Everyone jumped. I flipped to the first page. Since all the relatives are here today, let's review the finances over the last 3 years. Brenda panicked instantly. Are you bringing up money again? Lauren, have you no shame? I have nothing to be ashamed of, I replied. It's far more shameful to demand an apology after living off my dime. The eldest aunt frowned. Lauren, that's no way to act. Family helps family. Yes, which is exactly why I've been helping. I pushed the book toward the middle of the table. My mother-in-law's private rehab clinic, the nephew's prep school tuition, the cabin renovations, the fancy family dinners, the loan for the cousin's car, the utility bills when the eldest aunt couldn't make ends meet. It's all logged right here. The younger cousin turned pale. Lauren, why were you writing all this down? Because I stared dead at him. I bled for every single cent on those pages, pulling 12-hour ER shifts. The table descended into a graveyard silence. I am 24 weeks pregnant. Alex has accompanied me to the doctor exactly twice. Once he left halfway through because Vanessa called him, and the other time he dropped me off at the clinic door to go get Vanessa because she had a stomach ache. The other 12 times I went alone. Alex turned white as wax. I pulled out my pregnancy journal. Here is the log. The doctors always recommend the father be present, but Alex was too busy saving the world and babysitting Vanessa. Brenda let out a screech. What's wrong with a man working hard? There's nothing wrong with working hard. I looked at her. There's not even anything wrong with taking care of his ex-girlfriend. What's wrong is demanding I be understanding while using me as a free nanny and an ATM for the Davis family. The eldest aunt was struck dumb. The younger cousin stared down at his phone. The relatives' expressions began to shift. They came to watch me humiliate myself and beg for forgiveness. But they realized this wasn't a trial against me. It was an indictment of them. Brenda, desperate, exclaimed, "Are you saying all this just to humiliate Alex and make him beg for forgiveness? He's crawled enough. What more do you want?" "Divorce," I said clearly. That word dropped like a tombstone onto the table. Alex gripped the edge of the table with superhuman strength. "Lauren, can we please talk in private?" "Well." I met his eyes for 3 years. "I talked to you in private and the result was that all of you thought I was an idiot you could walk all over." Right then Vanessa arrived. She opened the door wearing a white sweater, her eyes red. "I'm sorry, Brenda. I'm so late." Brenda looked at her like a life raft. "Vanessa, you're just in time. Tell everyone that the day in the elevator, Alex saved you because it was an emergency, not favoritism." Vanessa stood in the doorway, letting a few tears fall. "It's all my fault if I didn't exist. Lauren and Alex wouldn't be like this. I swear I'll leave if I have to. As long as Lauren forgives him." The performance was flawless. She seemed to be yielding, but in reality, she was painting me as the villain who refused to forgive a repentant husband. In the past, I might have shaken with rage. Now I just felt extreme exhaustion. I pulled out my phone and opened the official CFD report Marcus had sent me. "Vanessa, do you really want to keep this circus going in front of an audience?" Her face fell slightly. I read the first paragraph out loud. Multiple victims confirmed that Vanessa repeatedly demanded the ventilated spot and engaged in a physical altercation with the pregnant woman, Lauren Davis. Vanessa's head snapped up. I read the second paragraph. Vanessa claimed to suffer an asthma attack, but medical exams confirmed no signs of acute asthma. Third paragraph. Vanessa's injuries were superficial scratches that did not warrant maximum priority evacuation. In the dining room, the only sound was the breathing of the guests. Brenda opened her mouth, but no voice came out. Vanessa's tears dried instantly on her cheeks. I put my phone away and grabbed my purse. "I won't be having dinner with you tonight. I'm leaving a copy of the ledger with Alex. I don't expect a single cent back. It's just to make it crystal clear that I owe the Davis family absolutely nothing." I turned to Alex. "I once considered you all my real family, but you took my efforts as obligations, my patience as weakness, and my child as a bargaining chip." Alex stood up, shaking. "Lauren, I never thought, but you did it." I said. I turned toward the door. From behind me, Brenda let out a wail. "If you walk out that door today, don't ever come back." I paused, but I didn't turn around. "I sure hope so." Before the door closed, I heard a relative mutter, "Hey, maybe we really crossed the line with her." It was a low whisper, but it sounded like a slap across Brenda's face. As I walked down to the street, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. There was an old photo of a young Alex and Vanessa in front of a first responder memorial statue from the floods 10 years ago. Vanessa was leaning on his shoulder, smiling sweetly. Beneath it was a text. "Lauren, you aren't his first love. Don't try to compete because you'll lose." I looked at the photo and let out a loud laugh. I texted back, "I'm not competing. You can have him." Vanessa's provocation didn't lose me any sleep. The one who truly couldn't sleep was Alex. Early the next morning he sent me a text. "Lauren." I looked into the floods. Vanessa wasn't the one who saved me. I stared at the screen for a moment but didn't reply. Half an hour later, he sent an old news clipping photo. It was from the rescue that year. Alex was on a stretcher, pale as a ghost. Vanessa was next to him crying, but in the corner of the photo was another girl with a ponytail. I didn't recognize her. Alex wrote. A veteran firefighter dug up the logs. It was that girl with the ponytail who ran to get help. Vanessa was trapped right beside me and couldn't do anything. For years, she let me believe I owed her my life. I turned my phone screen off. Sarah asked, "What's that about?" I showed her the phone. Sarah let out a mocking laugh. 10-year-old first loves are like an all-you-can-eat buffet. They only take what they want and claim it as their own. What a gem. But you don't care about this anymore, right? I don't, I said though. Corrected myself. Care a little. I'm angry for the Lauren of the past. If Alex only felt gratitude toward her, I could have understood it. But it turns out that gratitude was a fraud. He destroyed our marriage, missed our ultrasounds, and left me to die in an elevator over a debt of honor that didn't even exist. So ridiculous. I don't know who to hate more. Noon, Alex came over. He didn't come upstairs. He texted me from the street. I'm not coming up. I just want to tell you what happened back then. I had no desire to see him, but some knots need to be untied so you can throw them in the trash forever. I went down to the lobby accompanied by Martha. In the apartment complex courtyard, Alex was sitting on a bench. He looked gaunt, unshaven with no trace of the cold. Perfect Lieutenant Davis. Seeing me, he jumped to his feet. Lauren. I ignored his extended hand and sat across from him. Martha stood a few feet away. Alex looked at her and smiled bitterly. You can't even stand to be alone with me anymore. Yes, I answered. Pain flashed through his eyes. Lauren, when I woke up after that collapse, Vanessa was crying next to me. She said she held my hand and wouldn't let me sleep. Thought she saved me. I listened in silence. He continued. These past few days, I contacted the rescue crews from that year, and we tracked down the other girl. She told me she was just walking by, heard screams and ran to get the EMTs. She didn't want any press, so she didn't leave her name. And Vanessa knew. Yes. He closed his eyes. She knew. She admitted it. She says she didn't correct me because she was afraid I'd stop paying attention to her. I wasn't surprised. Vanessa always knew Alex's weak spot. Guilt, fragility, the memory of the past. She played those cards perfectly. Alex looked at me with tear-filled eyes. Lauren, I made an unforgivable mistake. I confused guilt with responsibility. I thought because you were so rational you'd always endure. I thought because you were strong you could wait. I forgot that pregnant women get scared too. You didn't forget, I said. You just never even stopped to think about it. That sentence made him flinch. Yes, I never even thought about it. He pulled out our wedding ring from his pocket, perfectly polished. I've been thinking about that moment in the elevator. Must have hurt you so much. I looked at the ring. Whoa. He froze. It hurt when I was suffocating in the elevator and couldn't scream. Told him. When I took the ring off, I felt a tremendous relief. Alex's eyes instantly went red. Lauren, please don't say that. What do you want me to say? Do you want me to cry, to scream, to wait eternally for you to choose between me and Vanessa? I don't want you to choose anything anymore. But because I no longer choose you. I finished the sentence. A breeze swept through the courtyard, lifting dry leaves. Alex bowed his head. The ring in his hand seemed to burn him. He murmured. Can we wait until the baby is born to talk about the divorce? No, I said. He looked up sharply. Why? You're weak right now. The divorce will only give you more stress. I'll move out. I'll send you my paycheck. I'll make Vanessa come beg for your forgiveness on her knees. I'll do whatever you ask. Alex, you still don't get it. I'm not negotiating terms with you. I pronounced every syllable with total coldness. I just don't need you anymore. Saying this, I didn't feel the tremor I expected. I only felt a peace that had arrived far too late. Alex turned pale. He seemed to be grasping at straws. Baby, don't you want our kid to grow up in a complete family? I'd rather she grow up in a safe family than a complete one. I stroked my belly. That's much more important. Just then my phone rang. It was my coworker Nora from the maternity clinic. Her voice sounded panicked. Lauren, Vanessa is here at the clinic. She's looking for you. She's crying outside the conference room saying, "You ruined her life." There are a ton of pregnant women watching. Alex's face twisted in horror. She went to your job. I stood up immediately. Sarah had just pulled up to the curb. Before opening the car door, I looked at Alex. Look, this is the fragility you've been protecting for 10 years. I got in the car and we drove off. This time, Alex had absolutely no right to stop me. When I arrived at the maternity clinic, Vanessa was on the second floor. In the main hall, they were holding a first aid class for expectant mothers. There were a dozen women sitting on mats with CPR dummies and medkits. Vanessa was sobbing inconsolably. I just want her to listen to me. Why is everyone blaming me? If Alex paid attention to me, it's because we've been friends since childhood. I never wanted to break up a family. She was using a pitiful tone but projecting so everyone could hear her. Miss Lauren is on medical leave and isn't working today. If you want to talk to her, call her, but do not interrupt the class. Vanessa shook her head dramatically. She blocked me and Alex won't see me either because of her. I don't know what I did that was so wrong. The pregnant women were whispering among themselves. I walked up the stairs, leaning on the handrail. When someone spotted me, they parted the way. Nora ran over to support me. Lauren, what are you doing here? You should be on bed rest. If someone puts on a theatrical production at my workplace, I have to come clean the stage, I said loudly. Vanessa whipped around. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Lauren, I didn't want to make a scene. I just wanted to ask you why you want to take Alex away from me. Because of you. He won't even pick up his phone. I looked her up and down. Vanessa, I think you've got the concept twisted. I am the one walking away from Alex. I'm not taking him from you. I'm throwing him at you. She was stunned. The entire room went dead silent. I walked to the front of the classroom and picked up a dry erase marker. Ladies, today we had scheduled the class on first aid in confined spaces. What a coincidence. A real-life case study has just been brought to us. Nora froze. Lauren. I shot her a reassuring look. I wrote on the whiteboard. Confined space, pregnant woman, elderly man, child, emotionally unstable person. I turned to the attendees. If you are trapped for 7 hours in an unventilated elevator with limited oxygen, who gets priority to sit near the air gap? A pregnant woman raised her hand. The elderly man, the child, and the pregnant woman. Exactly. He nodded. No, the person crying the loudest. Vanessa went pale. What are you implying? Rule number 1, do not scream, conserve energy, and avoid physical altercations, I continued. Second point, what is the most dangerous element in a closed space? Another expecting mother answered. Panic. Correct. Panic accelerates everyone's oxygen consumption and steals survival chances from those in critical danger. Vanessa rushed toward me and tried to snatch the marker out of my hand. You're talking about me, aren't you? She grabbed my arm. Let go of me, I ordered. I didn't. Why do you want to destroy me? You know I have PTSD. That I'm terrified of the dark. That I lose control. I can understand losing control. I looked up. What I can't understand is shoving a pregnant woman when you lose control. And I definitely don't understand compulsive lying. At that moment, someone stood up from the back of the class. I'm a witness. It was a woman with a massive belly. I recognized her. It was Chloe, the mother of the little boy from the elevator. She had come to take classes today and was sitting in the back wearing a surgical mask. She pulled it down and glared at Vanessa. That day in the elevator, Lauren protected all of us. You said you couldn't breathe and Lauren dug through your purse for your pills. You didn't have an asthma inhaler. Nothing. And you still grabbed her arm to steal her spot. My son wouldn't stop crying and she gave him her own jacket while sitting in the worst corner of the car. The entire classroom fell into a graveyard silence. Chloe's eyes went red. When the doors opened, I saw it too. That firefighter grabbed you and ran off without looking at anyone else. Lauren was slumped against the wall, pale as a corpse. Vanessa shrieked. You're all just taking her side because she's pregnant. Chloe let out a sarcastic laugh. We're not taking her side because she's pregnant. We're taking her side because she's telling the truth. Nora pulled out the visitor log. Miss Vanessa, you have barged into a private medical facility without an appointment, disturbing the patients and staff. We have already called building security. That was when Vanessa truly panicked. She spun around to run but saw Alex standing in the stairwell. I didn't know how long he had been there. His face was dark, shadowed. Vanessa saw him as her life raft and ran to hug him. Alex, listen to me. I just came to talk, but they all turned against me. I didn't want Lauren to misunderstand you. Alex looked at her. This time he didn't open his arms to catch her. Vanessa, why did you come here? To apologize. Does it require throwing a crying fit in front of dozens of pregnant women at her workplace to apologize? Alex's voice was low but ice cold. It's always been like this. Every time you said you were scared, that you couldn't take it anymore. It was just an excuse to make me run to save you. Vanessa's tears fell in buckets. Now you don't trust me because of her. Alex looked at her, and in his eyes for the very first time, there wasn't an ounce of pity. It's not because of her. It's because I've finally seen you for who you are. Vanessa's face was drained of color. Suddenly, she turned to me with a look full of venom. Lauren, are you happy now? You have your baby. You had your marriage. And now everyone pies you, but I've lost everything. I stared at her. If you've lost everything, it wasn't because of me. It was because you spent your entire life trying to steal from others. And in the end, you realized stolen things always slip right through your fingers. The security guard arrived and hauled Vanessa away, who kicked and screamed Alex's name. This time Alex stood like stone, not moving a muscle. The crowd began to disperse. Nora helped me to a chair. Alex walked to the classroom door. His voice strained. Lauren, I'm sorry. I didn't think she would come here. There are a lot of things you never thought about, I replied. His face crumbled. I'll handle her, he promised. I looked at the words I'd written on the whiteboard. Child, pregnant woman, unstable person. You should have handled her a long time ago, I said. He stayed quiet. I pulled some papers from my purse and handed them to Sarah, who passed them to Alex. Reading the title of the folder, his fingers froze. It was a formal grievance document, and the grievance wasn't against Vanessa. It was against him. Alex looked up in disbelief. Lauren, you're filing a formal complaint against me. You were my husband, I told him. And because of that, I found 1,000 excuses to forgive you for years, but you were also the incident commander of that rescue. That day, the person you denied timely medical care to wasn't just your wife. It was a pregnant civilian and an unborn child. The blood drained from his face little by little, I continued. You don't need to handle Vanessa. Handle yourself. After I filed the formal complaint, Alex stopped harassing me. He cooperated with internal affairs, submitted to psychological evaluations, and underwent protocol retraining. Occasionally, Marcus would text me telling me Alex had voluntarily requested a transfer to equipment maintenance and administrative desk duty at the station. He told me Lieutenant Davis was a shell of his former self. I read those texts and didn't reply. His changes were his, not mine. The only thing I urgently needed to process was my divorce. The day we went to family court, the sun was shining brightly, and Sarah came with me. Alex was already in the mediation room. He wore a simple black jacket and had the divorce settlement agreement sitting in front of him. Seeing me walk in, he stood up instinctively, but forced himself to sit back down. The mediator was a middle-aged woman with a calm voice. Please take your time with this, Mrs. Davis. Sometimes pregnancy alters emotions. Mr. Davis has shown a clear willingness to rectify his mistakes. A divorce is not a trivial matter, especially with a child on the way. I didn't interrupt her. I waited until she finished, then answered. I am completely calm and rational. The mediator looked at Alex. He said in a very hoarse voice. I don't want a divorce. It was expected. I opened the settlement agreement. The house was yours before we married. I'm asking for nothing. The car is in your name. The joint savings will be split 50/50. I have the bank statements. Child support will be determined based on actual needs once the baby is born. As for the medical expenses of the pregnancy, I ask that you cover 50% as per state law. Alex let out a bitter laugh. You're so calculating. You planned to leave me a long time ago, didn't you? I didn't look him in the eye. You taught me how to do it. Step by step. Pain surfaced in his gaze. The mediator asked, Mr. Davis, why do you refuse to sign? There was a long silence before he answered. 'Cause I still love her. I felt a twinge, but not of pity. It was pure sarcasm. I asked him, you say you love me, then why did you always run the second Vanessa called? He opened his mouth. I thought it was my responsibility. You say you love me. Then why were you at the airport picking her up during my first 3D ultrasound? You say you love me, but when I was hospitalized throwing up from morning sickness, you were fixing the plumbing in her apartment. Lauren. Alex, you say you love me, but when the doors of that damn elevator opened, you didn't even dignify me with a glance. When I finished speaking, Alex was left completely speechless. The silence in the mediation room was suffocating. The mediator didn't try to convince us of anything else. I looked down and signed the last page of the agreement. The sound of the pen scratching the paper was clean and fast. I capped the pen and pushed it across the table toward Alex. Your turn. He looked at the pen as if it were a knife. If I sign, it's really all over. Even if you don't sign, it's already over. I replied, you're just dragging out the bureaucracy. Alex's eyes went red. Lauren, that day I really didn't mean to leave you behind. When I saw Vanessa crying, my body reacted before my brain. I know it's a pathetic excuse, but it was instinct. Thank you for your honesty. He nodded. He looked stunned. Your instinct chose her. And my reasoning chose to leave you. It's quite fair. His hand was shaking. He picked up the pen but couldn't bring himself to sign. The mediator suggested, Mr. Davis, if you can't make a decision today, we can postpone the signing for another session. That's fine with me. I said I wasn't going to force him to sign right then because I was in no rush. I knew this divorce was going through one way or another leaving the courthouse. I had an appointment for my final ultrasound before delivery. Alex followed me several yards behind. He didn't approach. He just watched me stand in line, pay the copay, get my blood drawn, and go into the ultrasound room. He had missed all of this countless times in the past. Today, finally, he saw it all from beginning to end. Outside the ultrasound room, he stood by the door, listening to the powerful thumps of the baby's heartbeat echoing through the wood. Thump, thump, thump. Alex's tears fell uncontrollably. A nurse saw him and offered him a tissue. Sir, please don't cry so hard. You're going to stress out the pregnant mother. I heard the nurse from inside and couldn't help but smile ironically. Turns out he was now a stress factor for the pregnant mother. The results were excellent. The doctor told me my recovery had been miraculous, but to avoid toxic people at all costs, Alex was standing off to the side. The doctor didn't know who he was, but the phrase was a direct slap to his face. I gathered my reports, thanked the doctor, and walked out. I'll drive you home, Alex whispered. No, Sarah is waiting downstairs, I said. He nodded but didn't move. Lauren, can I touch your belly? Just once. Stop. The request wasn't unreasonable, but I looked at his hand and suddenly remembered that exact instant when the elevator doors pried open, so I said, no. The little light left in his eyes extinguished completely. Understand. That night, I received a long text message from Vanessa. She told me Alex wasn't speaking to her anymore, that everyone at the firehouse despised her, and that because of the scene at the maternity clinic, the PR firm she worked for a job she got through, Alex's connections had fired her. She said she didn't want to live anymore, and if I had an ounce of human conscience, I should tell Alex that the elevator incident wasn't her fault. I took a screenshot and sent it to Sarah. Don't even reply, she recommended. I didn't, but Vanessa didn't give up. Lauren, don't think you've won. If Alex won't sign the divorce, it's because he still holds me in his heart. He only pies you because of the baby. That text made me laugh out loud. She still believed Alex's love was some sort of war trophy. The next day, I received a notification from the fire department. A final disciplinary hearing was scheduled for Friday. Store representatives, victims, and top brass would be there. Marcus texted me. Lauren, the chief wants you present. But if you're not up for it, don't force yourself. I'll go, I replied. There were things I needed to hear in person and knots that needed to be publicly severed. That day, I wore a long beige maternity dress. Sarah told me, "You don't look like someone going to war." I stroked my belly. I'm not going to war. I'm going to close a chapter. The hearing was in the main apparatus bay of the firehouse. There was no press, but the families of the victims, the chiefs, and the department store owners were present. Alex was in the front row. He wore his Class A dress uniform, perfectly pressed, his back straighter than ever. But I knew he wasn't there to receive a medal. He was there to admit his guilt. The battalion chief spoke first. Regarding the elevator rescue of May 7th, it has been confirmed that although the extraction was completed, there was blatant negligence in medical triage and priority order. The incident commander has been removed from frontline duty and will undergo re-evaluation. A murmur swept through the bay. Alex stepped forward. His eyes searched the crowd for me. They met mine for a second, then looked away. I am Lieutenant Alex Davis, first an incident commander that day. His voice was firm but betrayed a contained tension. Upon entering the elevator, I failed to apply the medical severity classification protocol. I allowed personal bias and subjective perceptions to dictate my actions, evacuating Miss Vanessa first, who presented with minor injuries, thereby delaying critical care to Mrs. Lauren Davis, who was in an advanced stage of pregnancy. When he said my name, his voice audibly cracked. This was not a professional judgment call. It was severe negligence. I accept any disciplinary sanctions and I ask for the forgiveness of all those affected. He bowed deeply at a 90 degrees angle. The silence was total. Vanessa was there too. She was hiding in the very back wearing a baseball cap and a surgical mask, terrified someone would recognize her. But the more she hid, the more attention she drew. The department store owners also apologized, admitting they had ignored 2 maintenance reports of elevator malfunctions the days prior. I remember the delivery driver in the elevator mentioning he almost got stuck the day before. Those reports weren't infallible security cameras. They were small warning signs that someone decided to ignore. The entire chain of responsibility was projected on a screen. The maintenance logs, the 911 dispatch, the hospital reports, the witness statements, and the notes from my notebook. Seeing that crumpled piece of paper projected on a massive screen, no one could articulate a word. It screamed louder than any speech. Marcus also spoke as a witness. He looked a bit nervous, but he spoke with absolute clarity. When I entered the elevator, Mrs. Davis was already semi-conscious. Before we loaded her out, she pressed her wedding ring into my hand. People started whispering. Alex on the stage went stiff as ice. "This is a personal matter that shouldn't be in the official logs," Marcus continued. "But I want to say it because it proved to me that every small decision we make in a hot zone can destroy someone's life forever." Marcus paused dramatically. She told me, "Tell him my baby and I won't be waiting for him anymore." The silence was devastating. Alex was trembling in plain sight. He didn't turn to look at me, but I could see his fists clenched so tightly his joints popped and then loosened in defeat. Suddenly, Vanessa exploded in tears from the back of the room. "That's not true." Everyone turned toward her. Vanessa couldn't handle the pressure and ran to the front. "Why are you all blaming me? I was trapped in there too. I had the right to be scared. If Alex saved me first, it was his decision. I'm not guilty of anything." Alex looked at her with an icy detachment as if looking at a total stranger. "You're right. It was my decision, and that's why I am standing here accepting the punishment, but shoving a pregnant woman in an elevator, faking an asthma attack, and then harassing her at the hospital and her job. Those were your decisions. Vanessa's face lost all color. Are you willing to ruin my life socially because of her? Finally I spoke. Vanessa. I stood up, leaning on Sarah. Vanessa glared at me. Nobody wants to ruin your life socially. We are simply demanding you take responsibility for what you alone have done. She stared at me with visceral hate. You took Alex away from me. What more do you want? I laughed. I didn't take anyone away from you. And right now I don't want him back either. Alex's face collapsed. I turned to the high-ranking fire officials. I didn't come here today to revel in anyone's apologies or to ruin my ex-husband. I only came to make sure that in the future, when a pregnant woman, an elderly man, and a child are trapped in an emergency, they aren't left for last just because there's someone nearby screaming and crying louder. Well said, someone muttered in the crowd. Chloe, the little boy's mother, stood up, holding her son's hand. I want to say something too. If it weren't for Mrs. Davis that day, my son wouldn't have made it out alive. From now on, please teach your firefighters that the one screaming the least is not always the one in the least danger. A timid applause started, and then it grew thunderous. I didn't cry. I had shed all my tears in that elevator. At the end of the hearing, Alex was officially suspended for 3 months without pay. His return to active duty would depend on future evaluations. Vanessa was permanently fired from her company for scandalous conduct in public following the altercation at my clinic. She left crying buckets. This time no one chased after her. Alex approached me. He still had the ring in his hands. Lauren, about the divorce settlement. Talk to Sarah, I told him. He shook his head. I'm going to sign it. I looked at him. His eyes were bloodshot, but his expression was one of absolute calm. I know I can't hold on to you anymore. I said nothing. He placed the ring inside a small, clear Ziploc bag. It was an evidence bag, the kind rescue teams use to store personal belongings of accident victims. On the paper label he had written, "Wedding ring, quantity, 1 pending return." He held it out to me. I don't know what to do with it. I didn't take it. He looked confused. File it in the Firehouse Incident Archives. I said it belongs to that accident. Let it stay in the past. Alex's tears fell silently. He whispered, I really lost you. No, Alex, you lost me the exact second those elevator doors opened, and you left me on the floor. He wasn't capable of uttering a single word more. The divorce was finalized on a Monday. The county clerk's office was packed. There were people arguing, people crying, and people sitting in silence. Alex and I sat in the same row of benches with an empty seat between us. He held the signed papers in his hands, picking at the edges with his thumbnail. I didn't rush him. In that moment I felt absolute peace. When the clerk called our names, Alex stood up clumsily. He turned to look at me as if asking one final silent question. I stood up holding my belly and gave him no answer. The process at the window was fast. ID confirmation of intent signatures. They handed us 2 copies, one for him, one for me, the clerk said. The process is complete. Alex stood staring at those words on the paper. His eyes rimmed with red. Stepping outside, the sun was blinding. He walked behind me and suddenly called out, Miss Davis. Stop. How strange it was to hear him call me by my maiden name again. I turned around. He stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps, looking as if his soul had been hollowed out. Can I come to the final checkup before the delivery? Just the last one. I stared at him. He seemed to have finally understood that he had absolutely nothing left in my life. It's not necessary, I said. He smiled with immense sadness. Still just as blunt. Beating around the bush only hurts more, I replied. He nodded, head down. You'll let me know when the baby is born. I took a second to answer. The wind blew and the divorce decree in my hands transmitted a strange warmth. I will comply with the law and medical ethics. I will inform you of what you need to know as the father, But Alex, please don't try to get close to me by using your role as a father. The faint light in his eyes extinguished completely. Understand. I saw Sarah pulling up in her car. Before I got in, Alex suddenly called out, "Len, I hope you have a safe delivery." He nodded. "And I hope that from now on you learn to truly save people. Not the way you saved Vanessa running toward someone out of pure guilt or instinct, but by actually looking at who truly needs saving." After we separated, the days passed quietly. Martha cooked delicious meals every day. Sarah came over twice a week loaded with fruit and the most absurd gossip, making me laugh until my sides hurt. Nora, my coworker, sent me the clinic's course materials so I could work remotely from home. Chloe came to visit me occasionally with her son. My boy still remembers that the lady in the elevator was the bravest of them all. Chloe would say. I'd laugh and ruffle the kid's hair. I wasn't brave. We all just pitched in to make it out. At 30 weeks pregnant, I moved to a slightly larger apartment. It wasn't a palace, but it had a spacious living room, a balcony, tons of light, and was close to a park and a great hospital. I set up the baby crib by the large window and hand-washed all the little clothes piece by piece, hanging them on the balcony. The wind blew them like celebratory pennants. Brenda came to see me once. She didn't pound on the door like a maniac. She stayed downstairs in the lobby and texted me. Lauren, I admit I spoke out of turn last time, but please let Alex see the baby when it's born. He's completely broken. I replied, Mrs. Davis, please direct your communications to my lawyer. She insisted. Are you really that cold-hearted? I didn't answer again. Cold. I didn't see it that way. I simply felt that I had finally regained control of my own life. Vanessa texted me sometime later too. She said she was leaving Chicago. Lauren Davis, you won. I read those 4 words and deleted the message immediately. I hadn't defeated Vanessa because I never saw her as competition in the first place. The battle I truly won was against the Lauren of the past. That woman who sacrificed herself 1,000 times and swallowed 1,000 excuses, begging for crumbs of attention. Alex didn't interfere in my private life again. He asked about the baby through Sarah, but always in a very measured way. I heard that 3 months later he returned to active duty, but he didn't get his command post back. He started from the bottom running drills with the rookies. Marcus told me, Lieutenant Davis has a phrase he repeats in every single drill. Now, in a rescue, don't be fooled by the screaming. The one who is quietest is usually the one in the most danger. Hearing that, I smiled faintly. If those words ensured that in the future rescue teams would find a pregnant woman in distress in time, then those 7 hours of darkness hadn't been completely in vain. My daughter was born on a rainy autumn dawn. Before they wheeled me into the delivery room, Sarah was holding my hand and Martha was crying purely from nerves. I was drenched in sweat from the contractions. And suddenly I remembered that elevator. I remembered myself leaning against that freezing wall, hugging my belly and whispering, "Hold on a little longer, my love." And we had made it. When the sharp cry of the baby echoed in the room, I cried too. The midwife placed that tiny little person on my chest. It was a girl. She was perfectly healthy and her lungs were strong. I looked at her wrinkly little face and couldn't stop crying. I whispered, "Hello, Serena. Welcome to the world." I named her Serena so that in the midst of danger, she would know how to stay serene, discern the truth in people, and enjoy a life of peace. Alex found out about the birth the next day. Sarah kept her word and notified him. He didn't come running to the hospital to cause a scene. Instead, he asked Marcus to drop off a massive bouquet of flowers and a generous financial gift for the baby. The card read, "Lauren, thank you for bringing her safely into this world. I will maintain my boundaries as you asked, but I will fulfill my duty as a father, and I will never forget what I lost." I read the card, set the flowers on the nightstand, and handed the check to Sarah so she could log it officially. I felt neither love nor hate. Some people are better left in the past. Just like that wedding ring that ended up in the fire department incident archives. He was now nothing more than the memory of an accident I had managed to survive.